All right, we're going to get started. Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee meeting. In attendance today, we've got myself, Councilman Conway, chair of the committee and representing the 4th District. I've got Councilman Burnett representing the 8th District. Councilman Cohen representing the 1st District. Councilman Costello is running a little bit late, but he'll be on later. Councilman Glover representing the 13th District. Councilwoman Porter representing the 10th District, and Councilwoman Ramos representing the 14th District. And also in attendance today, we've got Councilmember Dorsey representing the 3rd District, and Councilmember Stokes representing the 12th District. Members of the Office of the President, got Nikki Thompson on the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nikki. Matt Stegman. And Aaron DeGraffenreich. All right, and representing the mayor's office, do I have Natasha Miu? And Nina Themelis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nina. All right, so this afternoon, we'll have a hearing for Bill 21-0155, Administrative Procedure Act revisions for the purpose of clarifying that an agency may, subject to certain requirements, incorporate certain documents into a regulation by reference, clarifying certain provisions regarding the notice and comment period, clarifying when a regulation is effective, renumbering certain sections, amending the date that relevant and current regulations must be submitted in digital form to the Director of Legislative Reference for codification into the Code of Baltimore Regulations annotated, revising uncodified text to allow for an initial adoption for certain existing regulations, and a later revision of those regulations to meet style and formatting requirements, and providing for a special effective date. This bill was introduced on September 20th, 2021, and it was sponsored by Councilmember Ryan Dorsey. I'll open the floor to Councilmember Dorsey to tell us about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Mr. Chair, I appreciate you very promptly announcing the hearing for this bill and support of the Council President's office in moving it along quickly. It is a time-sensitive matter. I want to give just a very brief overview, and I want to say that probably the best folks to answer more technical questions will be Vic Tervala and Amy Reppel, who have both worked to get this bill prepared, and it is their respective roles to help implement things as smoothly and as expediently as possible after its passage, and have worked to do so thus far. Just in short, the Administrative Procedures Act that we passed last term had some practical challenges in implementation and compliance that are largely due to the difficulty of formatting existing rules and regulations in the style that the Cobra, as you said, the Code of Baltimore Regulations annotated as the Cobra requires them to be styled and formatted. It's a very cumbersome process for agencies to rewrite all of their existing rules and regulations in that style prior to being submitted to DLR. And the major element of what this bill to modify that APA will do is to allow them all to be submitted to DLR as they are and be temporarily housed in a section where they can be found on the DLR hosted site for the Cobra while they are going through the process of being restyled, reformatted in the required manner. That allowing them to do this will allow us to stay on a timeline to remain in compliance with the existing law and continue to move forward without delay toward us having the Cobra put into place. So I think that in a more detailed fashion, Victor and Amy may be able to answer a little bit better the questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. So we'll now hear from the agency representatives. I ask that you please state your name before giving your report. And we'll start off with the Department of Legislative Reference. Do we have somebody from the DLR on the call? Okay, we'll move on to the Law Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is Vic Trevola from the City Law Department. Councilman Dorsey did a good job about explaining exactly what's needed here. Under the current law, under the current APA, the existing regulations will terminate as of November 16th, unless they are reviewed by law and formatted in the Cobra format style. This has proved a challenge for agencies to meet that deadline. And so the key provision of this bill pushes off the date, does a couple things. The first thing it does is it allows, as Councilman Dorsey said, it allows existing regulations to be filed with legislative reference as is, exactly as they're formatted today in an electronic fashion. And if it's filed by January 15th of 2022, a couple months away, then those existing regulations will continue to remain in effect. And as Council Dorsman explained, is that they will put in a special section of the Cobra, and eventually they will be reformatted, we hope, by an outside contractor. And so it relieves the burden, takes the burden off the agency's shoulders to do any of that formatting. So that's really the key provision and the really great need of why this bill needs to be adopted very soon to get rid of this November 16th deadline. The second thing it does, it allows regulations that may have images or pictures or diagrams that don't really fit the APA style. It allows those to be adopted by reference. So the idea is there will be some reference in the APA to those documents that cannot be reformatted in the APA style, but you can find them on a web page on the agency website. So that's the second thing, adoption by reference. And the third thing is that it's a little ambiguous about how when rules and regulations are effective when they've been filed. So this amendment, or the third amendment, will clarify that when a regulation is filed with legislative reference, unless a law says, or the regulation itself says that there's a later effective date, those regulations will become effective when they have been filed with legislative reference. So those are the three things that this bill accomplishes. And I'm ready for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Victor. We're going to hold off for questions until we've heard from finally the Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Mara James for the Department of Finance. We stand by our report. We do not oppose this legislation.
Excellent. Thank you, Mara. I'll open the floor to questions from the committee. Any questions, folks? Councilwoman Ramos.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, and thank you to the sponsor for your getting this bill together. If I understand correctly, the agency sends the regulation over to legislative reference, and then they upload it to the system, or does it have to then go to BSIT to get uploaded?
No, the BSIT has worked with legislative reference to make that hopefully seamless. Well, at this point, it has been seamless. We haven't had that many things that have come through. So the idea is that once it comes to legislative reference, they have a process for just uploading it onto the Cobra. And as I said, it will be in a special section of the Cobra until it's taken down and reformatted.
Okay, but legislative reference can just do all that in a timely manner. They don't need to go through BSIT. Okay.
We're not expecting it to be something held up. Nothing really stands in the way of that happening.
Okay, great, thanks. And then I was not around when this was developed in the last session, so you'll excuse me. But so this is, the regulations are formed through the normal process, right? So they are sent out for 30-day comments, they come back, then they're put into the, any sort of formatting, but then when it gets uploaded, there's somebody else is going to do the formatting. So the agencies don't have to do that.
Well, if I can interrupt here, there's two processes, one for existing regulations and one for new regulations. New regulations, so that is any regulation that has been proposed or that will be proposed after January 15th of 2021, this year, there's a new process for dealing with regulations, new regulations. Though that process requires a 30-day publication period. So essentially that works out. The agency basically writes the regulation. It comes to the law department to review. We make sure its form and legal sufficiency is good. Then that new regulation is published on both the agency website for 30 days or at least 30 days, and also on a law department website for at least 30 days. Within that time period, the agency will receive comments. You can comment from the law department's website. You can comment from the agency's website. So the public can comment on what they're looking at during that 30-day period. If you all, that is, if city council members wanted to ask for a hearing, you have that opportunity during that 30-day period to ask for a hearing. But assuming none of that happens, that is the regulation that is posted, there's no changes to that regulation, then at that point, it'll go to legislative reference and be uploaded on the Cobra. That is a process for the new regulations. The existing regulations are the ones I just got through mentioning, that process.
And if I can add one more question, Mr. Chair, as a follow-up, the Cobra is the system. So I wonder, do we mention Cobra in the law, or because it might change at some point, there might be some other name for it at some other time, and like, what's usually we don't name a system.
Yeah, this was.
Excuse me.
Can I respond to this?
Yes, Councilman Dorsey.
Thanks. Cobra is explicitly the name given to the Code of Baltimore Regulations Annotated.
Oh, I got it. I got it now.
Like the state is Code of Maryland Annotations
It's
Regulations.
Comar. Got it. Okay, I'm
Right.
sorry. I got it. I
And
understand.
a point of clarification on Vic's last response, this process for adopting new regulations does not wait to begin until January. It is already in place for any new regulations being adopted by any agency at this point. The existing regulations that we're talking about having submitted at this point are regulations that existed prior to, correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, 60 days after after the implementation of the APA law last term.
Okay.
So at this point, the only thing that is being submitted as existing regulations are things that existed basically a year ago. Anything new from any agency at this time must go through this APA process.
Thank you. I really appreciate the answers. And again, apologies, I wasn't around last time, but thank you very much. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? All right, we're going to move on to public testimony. All right, folks. So for public testimony, the committee staff will coordinate it. Please be patient. If you are connecting online, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you'd like to testify. It's located on the bottom right of your screen. Each speaker must state their name before speaking. Users who are unable to be identified by name will be unmuted by the host one by one. If you do not wish to testify, please say so when you are unmuted. Attendees will hear 2 beeps when they are unmuted. Please state your name and begin your testimony. And if a speaker is inaudible, they will be directed to call back or to provide their testimony in the chat function. With that, let's see. I don't see any folks with their hands raised. Do we have anybody on the phone line? All right, we've got one caller who's going to be unmuted. Do you have any testimony? Okay. No further testimony. All right, we're going to close the testimony period. And to that end, are there any amendments to the bill? Councilman Dorsey, do we have any amendments that we're considering?
No, Mr. Chair, there are no amendments. I would just ask that a member of the committee move the bill as it is. Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to move the bill as is.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Burnett, seconded by Ramos. All right, Conway, yes. Burnett,
Yes.
yes. Cohen,
Yes.
Costello, I'm going to call him in just a moment. Oh,
I'm
there
a
we
yes.
go. Thank you, Councilman. Glover,
It's a yes for Glover. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I'm having some kind of.
yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Porter
Yes.
and Ramos.
Yes.
Excellent. This bill passes unanimously and will be presented for second reader at our next council hearing.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Chair. Thank you, to all my colleagues and committee members. Thank you.